We get routinely abused, don't we, on social media?
Yeah.
But it's different with the podcast. People do seem quite pleased that we're continuing.
It's nice, isn't it, to have nice messages, to feel wanted, feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Well, in that vein, Stuart says, I look forward to MK, Martha Kelner, versus MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the sequel.
They do say that the second's never as good as the first, don't they, though? So I don't want to spoil it.
My money's on you. Marion says she just wants to hear more of Mark's singing.
Oh,
Don't we all, Marion?
I'm not sure about that, Marion, but okay. In a display of humility, though, James, you've left the best message to last. This one came from Iris. She says,
Mm.
"So happy you're continuing. I need to hear James the Voice Matthews
Oh
every
dear.
morning, as well as Mark and Martha, of course.
Well,
We're an afterthought in the
yeah.
James Matthews show."
Thank you, Iris. Cheers, Mrs. Matthews. I'm James Matthews.
James the Voice Matthews, you mean? I'm Martha Kelner, and on day 95 of Trump 100, Elon Musk, he's taking a step back from Doge to spend more time at Tesla. But it seems like not everyone in the West Wing is going to miss him.
But first, Donald Trump wants a deal on Ukraine, and he says he'll walk away if he doesn't get one soon. The Trump administration has spent the day piling the pressure on Ukraine, doubling down on its calls for President Zelensky to accept a US peace proposal that seemingly favours Russia.
Yeah, this 7-point US plan reportedly includes Ukraine handing over all the land currently occupied by Russia, including the illegally annexed Crimea, and a ban on Ukraine becoming part of NATO. President Zelensky said on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that Ukraine would not give up Crimea and that there was nothing to talk about, in his words, on this issue.
That has infuriated Donald Trump. He took to Truth Social on Wednesday lunchtime, hitting back at Vladimir Zelensky. He claimed that nobody was asking Zelensky to recognize Crimea as Russian, but Donald Trump appeared to contradict himself in the same post by asking why Ukraine hadn't fought for Crimea 11 years ago. He also said they're very close to a deal on Ukraine, but he's been getting increasingly frustrated with the pace of the talks. Remember, he had said during the election campaign he'd end this war in the first 24 hours. Clearly, we're far past that now, and well, he knows it.
Yeah, and I feel like that internal frustration has become externalized in recent days and weeks, maybe even weaponized by Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think so, Martha. At the end of last week, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he threatened that the US could walk away if Ukraine and Russia didn't sign a deal soon. Then he pulled out of peace talks being held in London today between European leaders and Ukraine, instead confirming that he'll be attending more face-to-face talks with Vladimir Putin in Moscow.
Yeah, Trump's Ukraine envoy, General Kellogg, he went to those London talks instead, but he's been sidelined by the administration recently. It looks like the White House is shunning talks with Ukraine in favour of personal negotiations with Russia.
Yeah, I think it's clear, Martha, the Americans are applying maximum pressure on Kyiv and on Europe as well, European
Yeah.
allies. They're kind of at the take it or leave it stage. I also think it's not too cynical to believe that Trump, he's looking for an exit strategy that allows him to save face.
Yeah.
That's why we see him, I think, framing Zelensky as an obstacle in all of this. He seems content to throw him under a bus rather than accept that he's failed to broker a deal that is a deal seen to be even handed and acceptable to both sides. We've seen him denigrating Zelensky on social media. Zelensky actually has come back on X, reminding us and Donald Trump of the Crimea Declaration of 2018 during Trump's first term. That condemned Russia's claim on Crimea. But I think, in terms of the bigger picture, the difficulty for Ukraine and the European allies is that, as bad as a deal with the US looks right now, having no deal without the US and with, of course, an advancing Russian army, it's a pretty ugly alternative.
Yeah, Zelensky's been backed into a corner, hasn't he? And one of the men who's had a big part in doing that is Steve Witkoff. He's the special envoy to Donald Trump. Donald Trump considers him his primary peace broker. To that end, he's been dispatched once again to Moscow on Friday, where he'll meet Vladimir Putin for a fourth time. I'm not sure Zelensky or the Ukrainian people will be holding their breath for that too much, because nothing particularly constructive has come from those meetings so far. And it's really not clear what Ukraine could get from the deal that Washington seems to be pushing on them. Uh, at the moment, it seems like if they sign on the dotted line that Donald Trump wants them to, they'll lose 20% of their territory, millions of their citizens. And in return, all they'll really get is an uncertain security guarantee from an American president who denigrates their own president, Zelensky, at every turn.
Yeah, and for all Donald Trump says that a deal is very close, the key deal makers basically in Washington and Kyiv could hardly be further apart.
Yeah. We've just announced that Trump 100 will continue beyond 100 days. Now it seems like we may very well outlast Elon Musk's role in the Trump administration. The news broke on Tuesday evening, as we were recording the last episode, in fact, that Musk was going to be reducing the amount of time he spends at Doge, of course, the Department of Government Efficiency, and instead spending more time at his electric car company, Tesla, and his other businesses.
Yeah, he made the announcement as news broke that Tesla's profits for the start of the year were well below what was expected. Sales of Teslas are down 20%. And Musk, well, he's blamed people who would, as he puts it, try to attack me and the Doge team for boycotting his cars. And he was on a call to Tesla investors. He had this to say.
There's been some blowback for the time that I've been spending in government with the Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge. There are some challenges, and I expect that this year will be there'll probably be some unexpected bumps this year.
He's certainly right that people are boycotting buying Teslas. Driving around LA at the moment, every other Tesla that you see has a bumper sticker saying, "I bought this before he got weird," or something similar. There is obviously a backlash. And if you're someone who has 30 to $40,000 or whatever to buy a car, chances are you're not going to buy it from a company which is owned by someone whose principles you don't particularly like. There are plenty of other electric vehicles available, which is another part of the problem for Tesla's bottom line. But I'm not sure any of this has particularly enhanced Elon Musk's reputation as a businessman.
No, indeed. He's been an outsized figure in the Trump administration, hasn't he? Remember that Time magazine cover that had him sitting behind the Resolute desk? That's how many people saw him early on as running the show. So for him to step away this soon, it's going to have a big impact.
Yeah, I wonder when his influence, though, did start to wane. We saw him putting millions and millions of dollars of his own money once again into an election campaign, this time for the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, not for the presidential election. That was unsuccessful. And I don't know how much that dinted both his own confidence and the confidence that the people surrounding him in the West Wing had in him. I suppose it was always inevitable that his time in government would come to an end, or at least be reduced. Temporary government employees, which he technically is, they're normally limited to working 130 days a year, which, if you count from the day of Trump's inauguration, would expire at the end of May anyway. A couple of weeks ago, President Trump was saying he'd like Musk to stay in government as long as he could keep him. But that is not the view of other people in the Trump administration. There was this high profile blowout between Musk and the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. At White Houses in days gone by, there wouldn't be shouting matches in the corridor, but that's exactly what happened between the two of them. They had a dispute about the IRS, which is the US tax man, essentially, and it blew up.
Yeah, according to one witness, and I quote them, it was two billionaires, middle aged men, thinking it was WWE in the hall of the West Wing. Billionaires fighting each other. I thought they just threw jewelry at each other.
It's not the first time that Musk's clashed with colleagues in the Trump administration. He's had public disputes too with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, Trade Advisor Peter Navarro too. You'll remember he called Navarro a moron and dumber than a sack of bricks.
Yeah, and then said that's an insult to bricks.
did.
Funny guy.
These personality clashes, though, they're perhaps to be expected in an administration with so many huge personalities in one place. And Musk has applied a lot of the strategies that he used in Silicon Valley, this move fast and break things approach to bureaucracy. And it doesn't always go down well, especially with someone like Besant, who's known to be a big thinking, working issues through methodically kind of guy. They're not cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, Caroline Levitt, the White House press secretary, she was asked about this Besant Musk rumble in the jungle. She said this: "It's no secret President Trump has put together a team of people who are incredibly passionate about the issues impacting our country." Politics, as you say, Martha, it's not been kind to Elon Musk. He came into it with the stature
Yeah.
that befits a billionaire, the world's richest man. And I mean, they were all clucking around him, Republicans. You know, he's a man who commanded respect and instilled fear. In fact, I was reading an article in Puck, and your old pal, Marjorie Taylor Greene, according to her,
Yeah.
Musk went around telling people that he had a nice list and a naughty list. So, you know, he had clout, but it's very quickly unraveled. You know, his work cutting the federal government with this Doge outfit, that has been messy. I mean, as much as some people will support it, it has been messy, hugely controversial, has caused much angst. And
Yeah.
of course, that's rebounded on many in the Republican Party. He ploughed, as you said, money into this Wisconsin Supreme Court race, backed the candidate who ended up losing. And I think, you know, his influence has been eroded. He's been slapped down by Trump, contradicted Trump, of course,
Mhm.
on tariffs, and increasingly has looked an awkward fit and a man who's lost his mojo as well as his money.
I wonder how much his professional reputation has been tarnished by all this, by his association with the Trump administration, and by the fact that he's not worn this level of public attention particularly lightly, has he? You know, this wandering around the stage with a cheese head on his head, this bouncing around carrying a chainsaw. It doesn't really scream serious businessman, does it? So it may take months, years for him to, you know, reoccupy the space that he did before.
Yeah, you're right. You know, the chainsaw and the cheesehead in American politics, where performance is a large part of it. You know, he doesn't do performance. He's awkward, doesn't look great on TV,
Mhm,
just looks like a bad fit, an unserious person in the wrong job.
mhm,
And I think that, as much as anything else, you know, just that lack of political performance will hamper him in terms of his durability.
mhm. He has said he'll stay on for 1 or 2 days a week still within the government, but I suspect that will be a more low profile role behind the scenes now.
It says here, Martha, and finally, my flagpole's bigger than yours. I don't write this script. But before we go, did you see Donald Trump's gone a bit grand designs monted on Alan Titchmarsh, the lot?
I think I did see this. He was walking around the White House this morning looking for somewhere to put a flagpole, and he wants it to be big. Of course he does.
We're putting up a beautiful, almost 100-foot tall American flag on this side and another one on the other side, two flags, top of the line. And they've needed flagpoles for 200 years. It was something I've often said, you know, they don't have a flagpole per se. So we're putting one right where you saw us, and we're putting another one on the other side on top of the mounds. It's going to be two beautiful poles.
Yeah, 100 feet. That's taller than the White House itself. In fact, it's almost as tall as any building here in Washington, D.C. Because, Martha, you'll know this, the law passed in 1910 limits the height of buildings in America's capital so that they don't obscure the monuments. The limit is 130 feet. So these flagpoles are going to be about as big as they can be. How beautiful they'll be, we'll have to wait and see, but they're not as big as the biggest flagpole in America, though.
No, I did have to Google this, I admit, but I think what you're referring to, James, is the Acuity flagpole in Wisconsin, which is 400 feet high.
Googling the answers, an expert on everything in 5 minutes, natural born journalist.
That's the job.
And that's it for today. Thanks for staying with us this far. Do make sure you follow Trump 100 wherever you're listening and leave us a review while you're there.
And as ever, if you have questions for us, please send them to our email address, trump100@sky.uk.
And we'll see you tomorrow for day 96.
See you then.
Bye-bye.